risks and benefits, how to make informed decisions in your business. In this episode, John Tonkin from Brain in a Box explores the importance of considering risks and benefits in business, particularly when implementing new technologies like AI. You'll learn about the importance of having documented systems in place, how to access the value of new tools and technologies, and how to make informed decisions about adopting them. Perfect for business owners looking to improve their productivity and optimize their business systems. I'm your co-host Anthony Pearl, and this is the Systems from the Box podcast. Let's start unpacking. John, I wanted to talk to you about this whole idea of risks and benefits. It's a very lovely broad heading, but it's something that as business owners you have to consider all the time, the risks and the benefits of things. And it has a huge impact when it comes to systems and what you're looking at, doesn't it? Because as a starting point, the risk that you don't keep up with the technology is huge. The benefit, of course, is you can potentially create efficiencies and other things, but there might be a risk that you lose some of that personalization that you might have had that might have been the reason that keeps you customers. So it's this kind of cycle that you have to take a closer look at, and systems are so important in being able to understand the risks and benefits to your business.
Yeah, actually, risks and benefits, and I want to tie that into AI, which has accelerated so many things in everything to do with business recently. The only reason that you or me or any other business owner has a business and can stay in business is because we know what the risks are in performing that business, and we know how to hopefully manage those risks, and we know how to achieve the benefits that the clients are, after. So if we don't do that, if we can't manage the risk and achieve the benefits for our clients in a way that they find attractive, then they won't be working with us. So if I'm a business owner and I go in and I really learn all the risks and understand them well around doing what I do, my specialization, and I work out how to overcome those risks and manage them well. In other words, I can manage those risks effectively, but you, the client, won't be able to. You won't be able to manage them effectively at all, which is why you come to me, and so on. So you think about it that way. Whereas now what's happened is, and I'll use some examples. I don't have to search for them. There are so many of them these days. If you look at anything, you go on and look at YouTube or Facebook or anything like that, every second or third, every probably 20th or whatever, but entry is something about AI. You should sign up for this thing. It'll tell you how to do this or how you can create a whole new business around AI and so on. And if we think about what AI is doing, it's simply, the large language model anyway, is simply collecting a lot of facts and things from books, from writing, and presenting them to you in response to your instruction and answer and interrogation. And if we use it effectively, if we do that carefully, we can end up with something that will give us an edge. But of course, if that edge we've just discovered using interrogating AI is the very edge that gave us a business edge in the first place, in other words, helped us manage the risk that keeps our business afloat, we don't really have the reason for being in business anymore. So there are so many things now. And indeed, we had an accounting business. This is a true story. Had an accounting business. This is probably 3, maybe 4 months ago now. And the business owner said, well, actually, we're looking at using AI to govern how we do our invoicing in the business. So we're going to have it in effect, and I'm probably simplifying this a little bit for you, but where in effect, the client or the operator in the business, the team member says, I need to invoice so-and-so for this and this and this and this. And they've already primed these things and loaded them into their model. But what they're doing then is to get ChatGPT to produce the invoice and all the paraphernalia and all the documents that go with it. And some part of that sounds fine, and some part of it sounds extremely scary. The really fine bit sounds like if we did that in a safe environment and we captured everything that it said we needed, and then we used that to guide us in implementing that process, That sounds pretty good. That sounds like using AI or using any intelligence just to get to the right result. Whereas just saying now dynamically, here's the problem, you tell me what the solution is and you do it, and me not testing it or not checking it in any way at all sounds a bit scary. So risk and benefit is the foundation of every business. There's no question of that. If we can't manage the risk and achieve the benefits, we won't have any clients for very long. And if we do, we won't be making much money. What we really want to do is to make sure that lasts. And we should be looking at tools, every tool, including AI, to work out if there's a better way or a more effective way of managing the risks and achieving the benefits. But we should be looking at that just as carefully as we looked at every other suggestion we had in the first place. So yes, manage the risks, understand them, manage them, master them, and then you've got a business, unless everyone else is doing it too.
And AI is a really interesting space because it is a bandwagon that, as you say, lots of people have jumped on and felt this need. Yes, we've got to use AI because everyone's talking about AI, so we must use AI. And in some cases, AI has driven a shift in terms of some people no longer might have the job that they had before. And that's the interesting thing, is because AI is creating new jobs on managing the AI. So it might have created some efficiencies in some areas and may have even meant that someone is no longer doing that particular role, but there's a new role that's been created which drives the AI to drive those efficiencies.
Yeah.
So you have to understand, as you say, the risks and benefits attached at every step.
Yeah. It's interesting. Back in the 80s, I remember talking to or seeing this fellow, a futurist, and didn't even know what the role was then, or what that was. But anyway, what he said, do you realize that right now, of all the roles, of all the jobs that we have in society now, by 2000, this was say in the early 80s somewhere, early mid 80s, I can't remember exactly where, but somewhere around there. And so we're talking about 15 years away, something like that. He said, by the time we get to 2000, around about 10% of the jobs we have now will no longer exist. And there will be another 10% of new jobs replacing them or something along whatever the percentages were, I can't remember. But it was significant numbers. This wasn't just something, there'll be a couple of new jobs that you've never heard of. But it was a matter of there would be jobs that we can't even imagine in 2000. And he was right. And now we come, since 2000, what are we, 24 years, 25 years now away from that. So we're 40 years ago when that fellow said that. And there were things that he hadn't thought of. I mean, he didn't think of everything. He didn't pretend to. But there are things which are always going to be outside our understanding. And so there are always going to be things that we need to be re-examining. That risk factor is always going to be there. If we think about all the things now, like, I don't know, would my job have been there? Probably would have in some way, manner of, not my job, but my business would have been there, insofar as there were people who were always working on efficiency and how to make your business work more effectively. And that would have been going back to the time of Babylon. But then you think of other ones, your job wouldn't have been there. I don't remember knowing anyone who worked on podcasts back in those times. Even in 2000, I'm pretty sure I didn't know anyone who was working on podcasts. There was a fellow, Ian Litchfield, I think. Anyway, there's this fellow who was helping us do some videos for the bank when I was working in the bank, a bank at that time, Banque Nationale de Paris. And what we were doing was to video something that was on a mainframe. And this shows you how things have changed so much. And I'm not just trying to go into an age thing here, but it was a matter of me putting cardboard all around the monitor with the camera, a video camera stuck back here, and black cloth over everything, and recording it inside that cone of darkness to try and capture what was on the screen. And that gave us just what was on the monitor. I didn't have the technology available to me, but we were doing that just so we could say, here's how you do this on our Fujitsu 360 and so on. And you think about it, all the things that have changed so much, and everything we're doing in all the change is accelerating so much. So things that we were doing quite happily in 2000 have changed so much even since then. There are services which we don't have. We moved not so long ago, and we threw out a whole pile of VHS videos and so on. I may have thrown out some wonderful family videos. I hope not, but I may have done so and so on. And now we're throwing out DVDs because why do you need DVDs? Because we've got download services. If we were designing businesses around these, we would be saying, what are the things that we have to manage more effectively than others now around those things? So technology is such a driver. And if we're looking at risk and benefit, we've got to look at the changes in the technology around AI, particularly so much. Not in any, wow, there's this new thing called AI, but just in terms of that conscious, steady thought about what we can do, what the risks are now, and can I manage them more effectively than somebody else using GPT or something like that.
Hey, John, I just want to take a break from the main part of the podcast for a moment so you can tell us a little bit more about Brain in a Box.
So Brain in a Box the idea started when I was working in corporate. I was working in a couple of major companies, internationals, and I decided that when I went out and started my first business in 2000, that it was going to use the same principles as I had done in corporate world to capture systems and to make them accessible to the team. But I thought, I've got to be able to do this for small business, small to medium business, and that's what we focus on. So we work with the business owner, with the team, to capture what the business does, and then to minimize the risk by going through and looking at all the risks that we have to manage, make sure we capture those and manage them effectively, and also to achieve the benefit. And then we make all that. That's just effectively what it is.
I think the interesting thing about this area is that when most people are looking at it as the bright, shiny new thing. So they've seen this and they've got, how do we bring this into the business? But I think by having systems that are documented in place, you can look at more effectively, can't you, about where such a new thing might be and whether it is as a chat GPT or whether it's something more advanced, where that might plug into your business and how much benefit you're actually going to get from it. Is it actually worth it? And when is it actually worth it? Because all of those things are important, aren't they? I mean, there has to be some kind of assessment process that you need to have that looks at your systems and go, what possible gap could this fill? And what are the risks and benefits?
Yeah, you've got to be looking at it like that. You've got to be thinking in terms of the same, actually, I'll step back a bit. The same principles are there. So you still have to examine risk. You still have to work out what the benefit is for you and for the client and so on, and how you can manage time, cost, and quality around that so you can stay in business. But now there are more factors to think of, and there's acceleration is another factor in there, because now it's not just time, it's time now, but time now won't be the same time next year. By next year, there will be more things in the game. So we've got to be looking at it more frequently. So what this means is if our systems are subject to change at all, and many people's systems are through technology or through other regulations and so on, we would make sure that we're reviewing our systems more frequently than we would otherwise. If we were doing bricklaying, well, bricklaying has changed, but not a huge amount. It's a process where, you mix the cement, the mud, and then you put the brick down and you cement them all in place and you make sure they're good and straight and level. So that's probably not going to change, although we do have 3D printing and so on. But bricklaying itself wouldn't be changing. But if my business relies on something where it is much closer to the edge, to the leading edge, then that is likely to be receiving a lot of attention in the market. So there will be people doing things in that. And of course, that everything that everyone does feeds into the AI models, which are going to be reviewed by other people as well. So you do have to keep on looking at it and keep up to date with everything. There's no question of that.
Yeah, and I think, it's trying to give it the perspective, as we said at the beginning, of the impact the business is making. And what I've seen a lot of people do is use the likes of ChatGPT to produce content to promote the business. But how you use it makes a big difference, because if you're just using it saying, hey, ChatGPT, write me an article on ABC, it will write you the article, but there's nothing of you in that article.
Yeah.
That article is based on what other people have made freely available. And therefore, it is a best of somebody else's or a collection of other people's work and not your own. And what separates you from the next business is you. So it is really important that you don't just blindly use the technology,
Yeah.
that you understand what the impact is and you understand where you're gaining your work from.
Exactly. And that's a critical one. I've seen people who say, I'm getting ChatGPT to write all my marketing emails now. Great. They won't sound like you. I'm getting ChatGPT or some version of it, some variant on it to write my marketing piece for my product launch next week. Oh, good. It won't sound like you. And then, of course, you can go one step better than that, and you can spend a significant amount of effort, if you like, in training or educating, instructing ChatGPT. So instead of just asking it to do something, we can train it first by saying, my business is this, it does this, it has that, and so on, and go on. And you tell ChatGPT everything about your business and then say, based on what I've just told you, could you please then write this article or these emails and whatever else it is, and you'll get a better result. But you're still getting something that is coming from that filtered, generalized view of the world coming through ChatGPT. It won't be you. So there is always that need to go back in. And we know this because very simply, there are tools now which will use AI to make AI written text sound less like AI text. So it'll go through and try and make it sound like it was written by a person. And you think when we get to that level, we've almost reached the end of that one. So, but yeah, it's just interesting little observation. But it is important to keep in touch with everything that you put out from your business and make sure that touch can be seen by your clients, I think, rather than just having the GPT or the AI do everything.
Yeah, and I think the same principle applies to any number of other things that you might be bringing into the business, whether it's, a new team member, whether it's changing a supplier, there's any number of different things that this kind of principle applies to, because it's not just about the latest technology.
Yep. I'm reading a book at the moment, a book on ultra processed food. And it's a very amazing book called Ultra Processed People. But it goes through and it really makes a startling view on things that we looked at and we thought we were doing the right thing. Like I'm looking at a particular food in a box and it says that it shows this nutrition. And I say, oh, wow, good. It's got a good amount of protein and it's got this and it's got that. And so I may think I'm buying something that's good. But then now we understand from looking at ultra processed food that that protein may have been very heavily fractionated from peas and so on. Everything now is pea protein and so on. And it is protein and it did come from a pea, but it is so far removed from being a pea that it is not really pea protein anymore. It is just now protein that happened to have come from one. And it's just so many things where we have a component that we think is perfect because it still says the same thing on the label, but it's not the same thing inside. And I think we're seeing that also with things happening in work now where you buy something, not only food, but where you buy a product and you think this product is going to be really helpful for this, but it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. We're supposed to actually go in there and examine it and look at it and test it and find out. And it's the same with everything in systems. If we just take it for granted, we'll get that sort of result that isn't very reliable. If we want to have something reliable, we really need to get in there and test it and understand a bit more about it, particularly now that so many things are changing. 60%, just using the examples in that book, 60% of the standard diet in US, UK, and Australia tends to be ultra-processed foods and so on. So it's hard to find things that aren't now. You buy supermarket bread. Anyway, all of that. I'm not going to go on a rant there, but it sounds like I am. But I'm not going to, believe me. But it is like, I think that we've got to look at that with our systems to make sure that our systems deliver what they're supposed to deliver.
Yes, I think the message there is the health of yourself and the health of your business are two things that you need to consider very carefully. Risks and benefits. It's sometimes, the fast food in a box is not always the answer, and the same goes for your business, right?
Exactly so. Look beyond what you see. And they just use those words that Keith Cunningham, Rich Dad, said, what don't I see? It's a matter of looking at it, and then you're looking at it, and what don't I see? And reading behind what you're looking at. Exactly.
Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned to. Thank you for listening to the Systems from the Box podcast featuring John Tonkin from Brain in a Box. Details on how to contact John and his team are in the show notes, along with other valuable links you don't want to miss. This podcast is produced by Podcast Done For You. I'm Anthony Pearl. We look forward to your company on the next episode.